Welcome to Dental All-Stars. I'm Eric Vickery, President of Coaching at All-Star Dental Academy, and I am very excited to interview our guest today, my friend, Matt Kluttz. We're going to be talking to a master leadership coach today on how to lead your teams, how to maintain a healthy culture, and just, I think, being a healthy leader. I think that those things go hand in hand. So welcome, Matt. I'm going to give Matt's background here. So Matt has over a decade of experience in neuropsychology and cognition, blending business acumen and cognitive training together to create self-awareness amongst high-capacity leaders. Whew, I got it. He has a BA in psychology and MA in leadership from Simpson University, and he's a seasoned executive coach informed by a counseling background, specializing in leadership development and team dynamics across multiple industries and diverse organizational groups. He focuses on educating teams on organizational health, there's that culture, and best practices through training, workshops, facilitated group discussions, and coaching. So welcome, Matt. You and I have been talking about doing this for a while now and getting your insight that you have with leaders and culture and really pouring into the dental side of this. So I appreciate you joining us, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been excited about this since you brought it up. I thought, how cool would it be to be able to talk about something we're both passionate about? So
yes. As you can imagine, two guys who are coaching, getting together and talking about things. This, of course, was going to come. There was no choice. This was going to happen. So I want to take it from the perspective of you're not like in dentistry like I am all the time. You don't see the same things. And I think sometimes dentists just think, hey, these are just our problems, or this is just a dental thing. And I from my perspective, my guess is, and I'd love for you to clarify on this, my guess is it's a human being problem, the things that we deal with. And it just happens to be wrapped in the dental bow. And so what I want to just jump right into it with you in your experience, just what is the biggest challenge you see leaders facing right now or in the last couple of years, especially?
Oh man. I mean, I would have to 100% agree with you. I think, regardless if you're in what industry you're in, and especially I would say dentistry, you're working with a close-knit team of people. So I think leaders share the same challenges across the board, no matter what the industry is. Especially I would say in the medical community, there's a lot of high stakes in play. And so I think they face some unique challenges, but there are some universally true challenges that leaders face. And I think from a leadership perspective, I think the thing that is most challenging for leaders is having the really difficult conversations with staff when they're faced with performance issues, or they're faced with a culture that's not where they want it to be, a culture that seems to be less effective, a culture that is lacking in trust. It's that leader's job. And I guess in the scenario you're describing, certainly would be the dentist's job as that number one chair to kind of facilitate those hard discussions. And almost every leader I come across, they just struggle to have the hard conversations. We don't like beating people up, and we think that that's what we're doing when we do that. And so it's a really different mind shift, a perspective to try to hone some really great skills related to having challenging conversations and addressing performances or addressing cultural issues. And so that's probably the biggest challenge I see with leaders across the board.
A bunch of dentists listening right now are going, yes and amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're on to something. This is good.
Yeah.
So I love for this podcast to be a coaching session instead of just listening for little tidbits or a sales pitch or anything. I would love for you to just maybe give a couple pointers that you've seen work, something that a great starting point for a difficult conversation is, we use crucial conversation, permission statement, intros, things like that. From your perspective out there, what have you seen work really well with that difficult, maybe team member or situation or culture shift?
Yeah. Well, I think the crucial conversations approach is excellent. I mean, I love that you bring that to your client base and that they're practicing that skill, because I think it's honorable with people. And it's a great way to go. I think just adding to that approach, I really advise leaders to start with observations. So once you have this kind of introductory moment with a staff person, a colleague or whatever. And it's that crucial conversation kind of approach where you ask permission and there's a camaraderie to sit and actually want to solve a problem together. It really boils down to, hey, I've noticed some things that I want to bring to your attention, and I just need your help to kind of interpret what I'm seeing. I've noticed, and you just kind of begin with observations. I've noticed that when a client or a customer or patient walks through the door, I see that you get tense, or that you struggle to find words to communicate with folks. I'm not sure what's happening for you. What's going on? And it becomes a question approach to kind of an observation. So when you list observations, you're not attacking, you're not making accusations. You're simply just recounting what has occurred to you. And as a result, you're asking for some interpretation. You're asking for this person to maybe fill in the gaps and help you avoid making certain assumptions, because we all make assumptions, and we make these assumptions and then we come to conclusions, and then we jump into these conflict conversations, and we're often missing big pieces of the context.
Yeah.
And so I remember working with a medical office in a different context, and they had a particular staff person who was terrified of answering the phone. And come to find out, anytime that the billing, they had a particular line for billing, and anytime the billing phone rang, this particular professional woman who was very competent, very sharp, she just would lock up. And, her head medical person was like, this can't happen. Like, this is her job, right? And he was really frustrated as he was chatting with me. But as we talked through, is she competent? Yes. Did you hire her? Yes, she's fantastic. Okay. Did she get your culture? Yes. Okay. She's on your team. Like you handpicked her. So how do we approach her so that you're not coming out with accusations like, why aren't you answering the darn phone? It's more of, hey, I've noticed when the billing phone rings, your behavior changes. You seem to act like this, or you tense up, or I notice that you'll step away from your desk. What's happening?
You run from the phone when it rings.
From the phone, and of course she didn't feel attacked, but she felt vulnerable in the moment. And luckily this medical supervisor had a good, trusting relationship, and they were able to unpack it. And before you know it, some real, clear solutions came to the table. They worked it out. She confessed that it was a bit of an anxiety causer for her, and they took steps to fix it. But had that professional not taken the time to have that conversation, it would have probably ended poorly. So
yeah,
I really encourage leaders, start with observations. What are you seeing? And then ask that person, what's going on? What am I missing?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing something here. Because they may actually say and give you context for something you didn't expect. And then you go, oh, that makes sense. And then you figure it out quickly. But it's a very non-accusational way to just get that dialogue rolling.
I'm typing so much right now that I want to unpack with you.
Okay.
So because here's the deal. Dentists bury their heads in their work, literally. I mean, they're in patients' mouths. That's it. Exactly. And so it's like, they don't actually even set up the time to have meetings sometimes. And so that's how we're going to talk about team engagement culture in a second, but I think that's a key factor here that we're making an assumption. I think you got to be willing to address it. That's the first thing. So overcome some approval addiction, get some coaching, get some direction like Matt's talking about here. I would also say feedback is not the same as coaching. And what you're doing by asking that question, I use tell me more about that. That's the question I add on the end. So, hey, this is what I noticed. Tell me more about that. What's going on there? You dig a little deeper. And I love how questions as well, to unpack it with them and get them talking is what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not telling them feedback. In other words, hey, you need to answer the phone. I notice you're running away from it. You need to answer the phone. That's feedback. That's stop doing something that's not working. Coaching, leadership, influence is asking questions you're so good at. And also coaching is not just feedback and stop doing this, it's growth towards what we want you doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I love the acknowledgement, state the facts, ask a question.
Yep.
I love at the beginning of that intro to say, hey, Ricky Bobby, hey, Ricky Bobby, I want us to work together as best as possible. And I love what you do here. And my job is to make sure you're doing your job as best you can.
Yeah,
and I want to
sure.
support you in that. And what I noticed is, and then there's that state the facts. Tell me more about that. And you ask that question. So I'm very pleased to hear that you and I are on the same wavelength with this. Getting to the next level of this, being effective with your team, engaging your team. What do you see as the ways or way to be most effective in engaging with the team? Because this is a problem focus. Now let's talk about how do you maintain and stay engaged with them? What do you think?
Yeah, engagement is probably the linchpin or the make or break of any great leader. There's a lot of leaders that are in positional forms of leadership, as you know, and they're disengaged and therefore they're ineffective. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of engagement, I'm thinking of the intentional scheduling of time and energy towards one-on-one conversations, eyeball to eyeball types of check-ins, mm-hmm. opportunities to really find out where your staff's at, and then growing with them. It's a partnership. So leadership engagement, I mean, you and I both agree on this, Eric, is that, leadership is all about making everyone around you better. It's elevating everyone that's under your care. And so the only way to really do that is to be engaged at a level that you, A, know where they're at, and B, you know where they're going, and they know where they're at and where they're going. And you both get to take that journey and check in regularly to make sure that that individual's getting to where they want to go, that there's that growth, that satisfaction in what they do, the personal reward. Because if you get their heart and you get their discretionary effort, then they're gonna be a part of the team in a level that you couldn't get if you just set parameters and mandated things. It's a level of a buy-in and investment that's so powerful, and it comes with that top chair, that leader's ability to engage on a regular basis. So I break it down into three kind of generalized descriptions. So okay. I say the best type of leadership engagement, first of all, has to be consistent. Okay. Meaning it's got to happen at the same time, whatever that is. If that's, once a month or once every other week, it needs to happen on Tuesdays at 9, whatever that is. And what that does is that communicates to your staff, A, this is an immovable object in my schedule. It's very important. I'm going to show up 100% because I care about you and the investment that we have together as a joint venture doing this thing that we're doing, this medical practice, dentistry, this attending to families' needs as it relates to dentistry. Like, I'm here and I want you to show up. So it's consistency. The second thing that's really critical is it's got to be frequent. There's got to be frequency. So it's one thing to say, yeah, we meet twice a year. It's another thing to say we meet once a week. Mm-hmm. That sends a different message to staff, to the people that you're investing in to be great. So it's got to be consistent. At the same time, that person knows and understands that's a very important non-negotiable. It's got to be frequent. So there's consistency, frequency, and the last thing is proximity. And there's something magic about being in each other's presence. I know we live in a post-COVID world where remote work is a thing, but I can't imagine that dentists are doing too fantastic a work like from home. I think they're probably in their practices, eyeball to eyeball in many ways, or mouth to eyeball, dealing with all types of medical issues. And the same is true for staff. There's just something more magical that happens when you're eyeball to eyeball with people. We're physical, biological beings. We pick up on so much information when we're just around each other in physical presence. Mm-hmm. We have a magic bubble that's about 18 to 24 inches. When you come into someone's bubble, it actually changes the neurochemicals in your brain. You are a heightened sense of awareness as to whether this person is a threat, whether there's somebody that you're willing to be intimate with, all of these types of things. So proximity with humans becomes really important. There's actually nonverbal messages communicated with eyes, and the dilation of eyes, and the smiling of eyes, and your body puts out pheromones. Pheromones actually trigger emotional responses in the neurocenters in the brain. I mean, so much is wasted or lost when we're having to do everything virtually. And while it feels like it's technologically advanced and convenient, you miss something. And the best engaged leaders, they're around their people physically. There's proximity involved. So it's consistency, frequency, and proximity. And it's that level of engagement that just makes it magic.
This is you showing your background in this whole neuropsychology background you have, right? Sure. And tapping into something that I love listening to you talk about, because in dentistry, I say often, you're in the tooth industry, but you're in the relationship business, and you can't relate to people if you're not being a human being. There's not a tooth walking to the door. You actually have a person there that you got to talk to and got to get to know and develop a relationship with. And I think sometimes dentists are very analytical, very left brain, and they are, hey, I'm a mechanic almost. I'm going to fix this and you're going to be on your way. I'm going to get you taken care of. You're going to go. And but you have to earn the right to get to that place. And that's where the relationship business comes into play. And the same thing happens with the team. When I hear you talk about this, it's like, okay, I told them what to do. Mechanic it, go fix that for me. Go do your job, do it well. If you're not performing, then we have a problem. And really what you're talking about with engagement is maintaining a level of relationship with them so that they don't perceive you just to be a person who's the boss, almost from an absentee perspective, because you're in a patient's mouth all the time. And when the schedule's not right, we talk about problems, or schedule falls apart, we talk about problems, or patients aren't saying yes, we talk about problems. But really, the frequency thing of being engaged in a relationship with your team is what is going to improve, I think, your influence, right?
100%.
When you're talking, this is what I wrote. Influence is leadership. You can't lead them if you don't know them. Exactly. If you don't know them, they won't respect your influence the same level. And so what you're talking about is you got to get to know them. Now, there is a line, this is where my question's going. There's a line of getting to know them that you probably don't cross. And I haven't really been able to figure out where that line is. And, hey, take care of my dogs this weekend, or, can you pick me up something next door on your way to work? That's like over the line, I think. But I still need to know this person, what's going on in their life and what they're dealing with, so that I can, as you were speaking to it, understand how they're operating in their personal life. So I understand how they're operating here. So do you have any magic sauce on where that line is, or is it just, you just feel it?
Yeah, that is such a great question. It really boils down to, I don't know that there's a magic line, because it's so subjective, because relationships are so unique. Humans are each their own snowflake. And so you're really dealing in a realm where there's generalities, but there's never a one size fits all when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I think the metric that you're talking to a highly analytical group, I think the metric you're looking for is, to what degree are you able to express some vulnerability? If you're able to be somewhat vulnerable without the TMI issue coming up, too much information, then you're in that zone where your vulnerability, communicates to your staff that you're human too, that you are a person who is figuring it out as you go, as much as you are also leading the team as we go.
Yeah.
So I think that makes you human. And when you're human to your staff, they seem to extend a whole lot more grace and a whole lot more compassion and empathy for mistakes that might be made, miscommunications. They give you the benefit of the doubt. It's what you said, Eric. It's when you know somebody, then you have influence, but knowing them isn't just knowing information about them. It's knowing how they see the world, how they interpret things, how they're wired.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to disclose personal things about yourself necessarily to communicate that you're a person who can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And admit you're human and display your humanity, and then leave room on the table for them to be human as well. That's where the magic is. And that's where leaders will have the most impact, the most connectability and unity with their teams, because you're humanized. You've all humanized each other.
Yeah.
It's hard to be disengaged, uninterested, uninspired, to a person that you know their name and you know what makes them tick and what inspire, why they're excited about what they do.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we're friends.
Right.
You got to get to that point where it's like friendship versus working relationship. And I think some doctors, I mean, obviously you can't go too far into that friendship role because you're in relationship with them.
Right.
But at some point, the opposite is a bigger problem where you just bury your head in the sand and you have no relationship with them.
Correct.
Like I've talked with doctors like, yeah, no, I'm the boss. I don't want to know anything about them. I don't want to know. I'm not, going there. We're just going to talk work. That's it. And I think that's a bigger problem. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I think I would. I understand why certain leaders have that perspective. They see it, they perceive it as less work. Mm-hmm. They see it as less draining, less drama, less all of those things.
Yes.
But as a result, what comes along with that package is less commitment, less work, excellence in work, less willingness to take one for the team that the staff might need on occasion to make that office really sing, and maybe even elevate that office to a higher revenue level, a larger patient base, all of those things that I think a lot of, dentists are hoping to grow their practices to. Your team, it's the synergy thing. And when you know people, they give more of themselves to that team dynamic, which creates that synergy. If you take my grandfather was an old German, and he used to ride a Belgian draft horse to school every day when he was a kid, right? This gigantic horse. It was just like 15 stories high. You have to climb on and go to work or go to school. And he would tell me stories about this horse. This horse was named Fred. It was interesting that it stuck with me. And I looked this up and it's 100% true. He said he had a couple of Belgian draft horses in the shed, but Fred was the nice one that let him ride. But he could get that horse to pull about 2,000 pounds worth of sled weight, trenching, plowing, pulling timber, whatever it was during normal farm work. So, but if he took Fred and he took another Belgian draft horse of equal size and put them together, the pulling power you'd think would be about 4,000 pounds. But in fact, it was 5. So there's something interesting about a 2,000 pound strong horse being paired with another 2,000 pound stroke, and then getting an extra 1,000 pounds worth of capability out of this relationship. And so I think when a dentist can say, yeah, I do want to be a little vulnerable. I want to know my staff a bit. I want to know what makes them tick, what motivates them, what inspires them. What happens is they gain that trust at a deeper level that we're a team and the unity is important. And as a result, that person brings more of themselves to their work. And that's that extra 1,000 pounds that you get to pull the sled, and you achieve so much more in a team dynamic.
So good. Yeah. It's exponential. We talk with teams about having team meetings. When you have effective team meetings, you're 33% more effective when you're doing the work. And right. And then they go, oh, I can't afford to take time off to have meetings. And
can afford not to take time off to have meetings.
So, and I'll just speak to the audience here for a second, but this will be good for you too, Matt, just to hear this. Let me see if I can verbalize it well. I was meeting with a client, big client, very, very good office. And they meet 2 Thursdays a month for 2 hours. Oh no, I'm sorry. Every Thursday for 2 hours. Wow. So 8 hours of meeting time. And it's a very, very, very productive practice.
Yeah.
And at this, right after that, I'm talking with a team who's productive, maybe at about not quite half of that, maybe like 60% of that level, that practice, and both are very good. And they're going, yeah, we take we meet for 1 2-hour meeting a month. That's all we can afford to give. It's like, then that 2 hours is going to determine the level of growth you're going to have when you're not in the meeting time. It's a direct reflection. And what I'm hearing you say is, if we're spending time, not wasting time, spending quality time with one-on-one people, we can build that energy, that connection, that relationship up to a point where you're going to get more out of them because they're better connected to you. And so that's time well spent, time well invested. Is that fair?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And you might say, well, Matt, how does that happen? I mean, just because I'm hanging out with people and talking about the fact that my kids played soccer on the weekend, how does that translate into more work from my people? And that's a fair question. But as you get to know each other, it's almost like the relationships that we all have, where you start to anticipate and understand how a person might answer questions, or how they might tackle a certain problem, or how they might address a concern of a patient. you begin to know each other so well that you can kind of start to really understand how a person might complete that sentence that you're about to say. That level of connection allows you to be so much more operationally efficient, that the team works less hard to accomplish the same goals. It's like finding another gear in the transmission, and suddenly the same horsepower motor goes 30 miles an hour faster. It's less work on the machine to produce this more output. So it's that there's something magic that happens when you know people, you work more seamlessly, you create operational efficiencies, which and then translates to the bottom line.
So you got me thinking about two things. I love this. I could probably do like a 4-hour podcast on that. So we won't do that to you. We got five more minutes. But I will say this, two things I thought of, and then let's unpack it. But forgiveness, I think that's a really, really key word, because you can't move past challenges with team that you want to keep on your team without some level of forgiveness, whoever side it's on. And you can't get to forgiveness without someone who respects you and values you and you have a relationship with. You're not going to forgive somebody you don't know. You're just going to walk away. You're going to eject.
Right.
So when we talk about, well, what's the solution here? Forgiveness. A lot of times the solution in drama situations, built up team, bad culture, mojo, it's getting to forgiveness, which we won't get into right now. But I think that's important for people to hear, is like that human part, that grace part you're talking about, that is connected to, at some point when you need it, the forgiveness aspect. And forgiveness can only be authentic. It can't be
true.
Basic. So
fake forgiveness.
That's right. And so for it to be authentic, your relationship has to be authentic. So that's one. Number two is I can imagine dentists sitting there listening, office managers listening, team leaders listening right now saying, well, I'm having this meeting, Matt. What do I say? I'm sitting there with them one-on-one, and you mentioned soccer over the weekend, but is there a format? Is there a structure you use? Are there questions you suggest, don't do this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the approach of a meeting really makes or breaks a meeting. I think there are certain specific things you can do to honor the folks that are going to show up to the meeting. One of them is have an agenda. I know that people, we just like to shoot from the hip and just show up and, tackle whatever's going on, and right. But you have a diverse personality type in your staff pool. I would imagine most offices are diverse. So you have introverts and extroverts, and people who like to plan, and people who like to be more flexible. And so when you offer an agenda, you invite those people who need a plan and need some structure or context to be really bring their best selves to the meeting. So that's one thing that's just really important to do, is create an agenda. Make it a couple of points, 3 points, things that you're going to talk about in this meeting, so that people know what to expect and what to bring to the discussion.
So you would share that agenda with the one-on-one person you're meeting with?
Yes, it could be one-on-one. It could also be if you're going to do a 3 or 4-on-1 because it's a particular team, like maybe it's just the dentist with the hygienist, or maybe it's the dentist with the entire staff, or just the administrative staff, or just the billing staff, or whoever it might be, because those topics will change. But an agenda just really helps. It helps people show up prepared or know what to expect. Anytime you can demystify a meeting and take a little of the anxiety out of it, you're going to get the best from them.
That's good.
So that's one thing to do. The second thing is yes, I would always start a meeting with connection. You and I both know how valuable it is to just be human with each other for 5 or 10 minutes. Ask questions about weekends and plans and what's new with people, and do something that humanizes you and reminds you all that you're all on the same team, and that we're working together to innovate and think creatively or solve problems or whatever it might be. Same team. And then I think doing kind of what you've described, and that is, how do you ask coached, informed questions inside of that meeting? It starts with what you perceive maybe the issue is, or whatever the agenda item is, but then it's opening the floor up with open-ended questions to get the team engaged in the discussion. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called Death by Meeting, and I really like it because he talks about the need for there to be some conflict in some meetings, because it's like a great movie. Yeah. A movie with no conflict is like not worth watching. It's boring. if there's not a problem, a hero, or something to solve, a dragon to slay, and a happy ending, it's like we're bored with the movie.
Yeah.
And meetings are very similar. If we
Yeah.
show up and we perceive it as a waste of our time because we don't even know what we're really talking about, there's just a lot of banter, it becomes a meeting that people don't want to participate in. So how do you
Yes.
correct that? You correct it by identifying what maybe a challenge would be, and then opening the floor up and letting them have permission to answer these open-ended questions about what they perceive the issue is and how they might solve it and where they think our challenges will be and where will our obstacles be. And suddenly you get this buy-in and this enriched conversation. And it doesn't take much for the facilitator to do that.
Yeah.
It just takes the humility to ask open-ended
questions. Yeah. So
in a coaching form.
This is so good. So I just realized that all my meetings are comedies. They're not dragon slaying movies, they're comedies. That's the first thing I recognize.
Those are good. A good rom-com comedies. That's not bad, Eric.
All my client meetings are comedies, making people laugh. I mean, you learn 4 times faster when you're laughing. So we got to laugh during meetings. Second thing you got me thinking about was be interested, not interesting. You know, you're saying, hey, talk about plans and family and what's going on with you. And then that turns into more questions about how, I mean, you can be vulnerable and relate to those things and share some things about yourself, but you know, a majority of the conversation as a leader is you're asking. And I just wrote down in quotes, how, and use that word, how, you know, how's it going with, how do you feel about that? Tell me how, you know, use those forced open-ended questions with how, tell me, describe, explain, share with me.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes. And I love what you just said. I think I'm going to steal that. You know, it's about being interested, not interesting. The emphasis is not on you as the facilitator leader. It's on your staff. It's opening them up to the participation. I love that. But that requires, like what you said earlier, Eric, it requires humility to make it, you know, C.S. Lewis says, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking about yourself less.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of it. And if you have that posture, then you can be interested and not have to be interesting. So that's I love that. That's a great way to phrase that.
Yeah.
It's curiosity.
Yeah. And I love what you said about finishing each other's
sentences.
I was going to say sandwiches. Oh, okay. We're close. We're getting there.
I already did that.
There's the comedy. All right. We got some comedy in. So if you're a leader and you're sitting here listening to this and you're hearing Matt talk and Matt has some advice for you, it sounds to me, if I can summarize, are you meeting with your people? Are you setting aside productive, effective conversations, not just communications? Okay. And that could include one-on-ones. And it could mean that you're also keeping people engaged because you're seeing lack of engagement a certain way. They're going different routes. When we have people leaving all the time for different careers now, the Great Resignation, right? They're disengaged. Literally, they're gone. So you can't look back and go, wow, I wish I would have engaged with them more. Be proactive with it. I think that's a good thing. And then be purposeful about setting aside time and developing relationship. And you gave us 3 really good pointers. Number 1 was meet consistently, having regular meetings, making it important, right? What was number 1?
Consistency.
Yeah. Consistency. Okay. Number 2, frequently, right?
Right.
How often are you meeting?
Consistently once a month, maybe it's once a week. Its frequency certainly has an impact on people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have consistently in here. I just didn't put it as number 1. Consistently happening. This is important. Frequently, how often are you meeting? And then proximity, being in connection with someone. Yeah. Okay. That's so good. I love it. And if you're listening to this and you're a D personality dominant style, C compliant, conscientious person, the task is now set before you. You can make relationships an action item, something to do, a task.
A scheduled item.
That's right. If you're an I or an S, an influence or a steadiness person, and you're more on the emotional right brain side, now you got to give it structure. Now you probably love doing this sort of stuff, but give it some structure, give it an agenda, give it some direction. So it's not just a flight. You don't know where you're going. Yeah. Just, hey, let's just go to 30,000 feet and see where it takes us. Yeah. So, okay. What else would you add? Anything, any icing on the cake, Matt? You feel like we put a bow on it, or what else?
You know, I think there's a lot there to just put into practice. And,
That's right.
I think if any leader just starts to just comb through all that we've talked about and just pick a couple things and focus on those, I think they're going to see some high leverage moments where you're going to see staff shift, and it will definitely hit the cultural bottom line. But I would say at the very end of the day, unity is the goal. We are always better when we're together.
That's good.
And we're a tribal kind of an animal, as a human. And so whatever you can do, leaders, to create unity, it will never serve you poorly. It will always serve you well. So
yeah, that's so good. Thank you, Matt. We say we're a team, not a staff. A staff is an infection. And that kind of staff. So team, right? Awesome. But I love unity. I love that. That's so good. There's that imagery. I'm sure you've seen it. It's not hieroglyphic, but it's like this leader, and he's sitting up on the chair, and the team is pulling, and he's got the whip going. He's standing from behind, and he's doing the whip. And then it's like bad leadership. And there's good leadership, and he's in the front, and he's pushing along with them. And what I think that is a type of unity, but I think what you've done is said, hey, don't be in the front pushing. Let's move you to the back of that line and have you push so that you can see everyone and you can cheer them on. You can give them feedback. You can give them coaching. You can, hey, this is what I'm noticing. I'm seeing you push this way, and you can give some interaction with them. When you're just in the front and you're out leading to your own thing, you have no idea what's going on behind you. Is that fair?
It's a great metaphor.
All right, cool. Love it. Man, this was awesome. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. I really, really appreciate you having us on, being on the show, and having everyone listen to your just perspective, because we so need it right now. Great resignation is upon us, and we want to keep our valuable team members on board. So this was great. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, all right. So those of you listening, our regular listeners, thank you so much. Continue to share this with your colleagues. We really appreciate it. We love your feedback, topics you want to have discussed. We'd love to hear more of that. You can email Heather at allstardentalacademy.com. If you want one-on-one coaching, if you want to interact, you want leadership coaching, we're here for you. And I just really, really appreciate it that you're pouring into yourself and you're investing in yourself. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, go out there and be an all-star.